genetic molecule, the DNA. And ever since, those who promote evolution theory have been pushing the idea that modifications of this remarkable genetic information package is the mechanisms which causes evolution. You see, they had to make that claim because if evolution could be true, it would have to be because changes to the DNA make it possible, make it happen. However, a whole lot has been discovered about human genetics and biology since then. And we have discovered a number of things that discredit the evolution theory. So what has happened is modern science, evolution theory has run into modern science and been thoroughly disproven. In this hangout, if I get an audience, if I have some people join, I'm going to provide you with some astonishing scientific evidence that human evolution is not only impossible, but never happened. Rather, not only didn't happen, but is impossible. We know today from certain discoveries in genetics regarding things like genetic variation, one of the very processes claimed to be evolutionary that causes evolution, which is genetic recombination, the variation of people, is an evolutionary process, so it's claimed. The truth is, it does the opposite of evolution. It prevents evolution. It's destructive. And the same is true of single-nucleotide polymorphs, any kind of genetic mutation, and especially new scientific discoveries regarding what are called recombination hotspots in the human genome. When compared to those of the chimpanzee, we find some very remarkable and interesting things that discredit the evolution theory. But the general public is not made aware of these things because the promoters of evolution really don't want the general public to have an understanding of these things. They simply want to promote their evolution theory, pseudoscience as it is, and let the public be ignorant of the many discoveries in science that have disproven the evolution theory. They have to keep the status going. And so they don't tell the public the things that have been discovered, things which have the scientists scratching their heads and wondering, how do we explain evolution with this? And I'll provide you with some very interesting very telling explanations of how what is actually proof against evolution theory is packaged and repackaged by the promoters of evolution to make it look as though it's actually evidence for evolution. There's a sort of self-delusion that scientists who promote evolution must endure. Whereas they look at something that is clearly evidence against evolution theory, and then they fabricate means by which to solve the issue in their mind. And when they do their experiments, they find no support for it, but then they conclude it happens anyway. This is a horrific abuse of science and completely unscientific. Hey, Brother Luke.
Howdy, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay, I suppose. How about yourself?
Well, I'm a 9.60 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, well, that's just a typical day. Every once in a while, I get up to 9.65.
Oh my, yeah. you got a real scale going on, though.
Yeah. Someone said to me, "Well, why aren't you a 10?" And I said, "Well, when I'm in heaven, that's a 10."
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you going to talk about today, brother?
Well, any variety of subjects, really. But I thought I would discuss some of the new discoveries in science that show us that evolution never actually happened. In fact, is impossible. Some of the things that the evolutionists claim are actually mechanisms for evolution in human beings, at least, have been proven to be destructive, and they're the very opposite of what the evolutionist claims. Instead of a mechanism for evolution, they're simply a mechanism for the degradation and destruction of a species.
Yeah.
But evolutionists, they'll take what's proven to be evidence against evolution and package it in such a way that it looks like evidence for it. And this is how fraudulent, utterly fraudulent these people are, and how they deal with science in order to promote their paradigm.
That sounds very interesting. Are you live now, or are you going to go live soon? Oh, you are live, right?
Yes, we're live.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me give me like a minute or two. I'll come back and join you for a while, but I got to turn off my TV and do a couple things. I'll be right back.
Great.
Okay.
Glad to have you. So this is why I say that evolutionists should be kept away, atheists specifically, should be kept away from science, like a box of matches should be kept away from the hands of a small child. They have no business doing science. It's true that an evolutionist, an atheist even, can do good science, but whenever it comes to science done that relates to organic living things, they genuinely cannot do good science. It is not possible for one who is a promoter of evolution to do genuinely good science. Hello, artist. How are you?
Oh, hey, is this on my MMA account?
Yeah, it's MMArtist141.
Yeah. Sweet. I was gonna hop into my other computer so I can do some screen sharing and whatnot, and just a placehold. So just to let you guys know that I'd like to join in and have a discussion. So I'll be right back.
Okay, great. Oh, I got that big old yummy cup of mug of coffee. I like my coffee.
Yeah, I quit drinking coffee for a couple of months. I tried to give up all kinds of stuff because medicines and prescriptions. I was just so messed up from so many different things. I thought, well, let me try to give that up too, to see if it helps. But it didn't help me or hurt me one way or the other. But I did feel definitely when I quit drinking coffee for a couple of days, I had extreme fatigue getting off the coffee.
Wow, that's something else.
Yeah.
I love my coffee. I'm drinking a Coke right now. I probably drink too many. I might as well late. You typically don't, but I go on binges. I'm one of those binge persons. I'll do without Cokes for a month, and then I'll drink nothing but Coke for a week, and then I'll go without for weeks, and then I'll drink gobs of Coke during the week. I don't know why I'm that way. I'm the same way with ice cream. I can go without ice cream 2 months, 3 months in a row, and then it's like once a week I'm buying a half gallon of it, and I do that for a month, and then I lay off of it for 3-4 months. I don't know why I be like that, but I do.
Yeah, well, it's like if we're gonna binge, let's binge on Jesus.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Actually, we should like have a daily dose of Jesus and then go on binges too.
We need it.
Yeah.
Lord knows our sinful hearts need that.
I'm just thankful for so many saints like you and others on YouTube that you have.
I don't consider myself a saint in any way, but I appreciate the kind words.
Well, according to the Bible, you're a saint. Everybody who is a Christian is saved. That's the word Christian and saint are really interchangeable.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't feel that way, but I know what you mean. I know the word doesn't imply that.
On your own merit, you don't qualify, but because the righteousness of Jesus was imputed to you, you are certainly a saint.
I appreciate that. That's what the word teaches, is it not?
Yeah. But there's you and others have an awful lot of knowledge to contribute, and then so we also have a chance to have fellowship too, which is, to me, I love to learn and I love to teach, but fellowship is my primary interest.
All right. That's a good thing. I'm a little bit different. I'm somewhat the opposite of that. I love to inform people of things and to show things that are true, what we've discovered, and what's not true. And fellowship is probably not my priority. I suppose maybe that's wrong. There should be, but I get fellowship out of discussing with these matters with other Christians. So we do discuss Christian matters a lot in my hangouts, and we preach the gospel too. But my main thing is this evolution lie. It really it got under my craw when God reached out to me and touched me and brought me to my knees in tears with His love about 8 years ago. It just lit a fire under me somehow, this lie of evolution, because I guess because I realized, that I actually had a loving, merciful creator and that I was created. And so I saw that the world was telling a big lie, that we're not created by God and that nature itself is our creator. And this was an insult to God. I saw this as a huge insult to God, to even deny that He actually is our creator. That, I mean, to claim He doesn't even exist. He didn't make anything. That's like, what in the world? That's what this world is coming to. And it made me so angry that I just felt like I wanted to speak out about it. And I think maybe God drew me into that. Maybe, I don't know, is a way of drawing me closer to Himself by getting me involved in something, very fired up about something. Maybe it was, a tool is, look, I'm going to light a little fire in you, and that's going to draw you towards me. Maybe He did that. I don't know. I think He kind of did. But
yeah, I thought I'd turn my camera off since most people just put their icon up there, so I'll just go ahead and do it that way. But yeah, it's righteous anger, and
I think so. Yes,
you are in a spiritual war, and you need the full armor of God all times, because really you're in an arena, and I'll come into the arena with you sometimes, but I prefer, as I said, the fellowship of believers. Mm-hmm. But we got to also carry on the fight, defend the faith, and really the most horrible lie ever, of course, is that there is no God. Right. And Darwinism was only invented to try to support that idea.
Absolutely was. Most secular-minded people would not believe you if you told them that. They'd say, "Oh no, evolution is a science thing." No, I'm afraid it's not. The cause for evolution theory is Satan whispering into the ears of gullible people to influence them to put forth things. Look, if God can speak to the prophets, Satan can speak to his prophets. I promise you, and he has. And this lie of evolution is exactly one of those. It is a tool used by the enemy to cause the world to disbelieve the biblical account of creation. That's all it is.
That's right. It's the sole purpose is to explain away God, and
that's right.
And then it's the people who the thing that really bothers me now is in the United States. I imagine much of the industrialized world it's the same kind of a thing. Like, we have our presidential campaign going on now, and they're going to want to ask every candidate, well, you don't believe in creationism, do you? They just asked that to Ben Carson recently, and I was disappointed because he has a lot of videos up of him teaching against creationism. I mean, against Darwinism, defending creationism, and he has a lot of knowledge. He has a scientific mind, and
he sure does. He's a neurosurgeon.
He's a neurosurgeon, but he's not very well versed in other sciences. That's
well.
Sure.
Let me finish my point here. Then you can stick in your 2 cents. But Ben Carson he's very intelligent. He's very knowledgeable on this subject of refuting Darwinism. I've seen him do it. He does a good job of it, but I was disappointed when he was asked the question, instead of directly saying, no, I believe in the creation account in the Bible is true. He didn't do that. He said, I believe God created everything, but how long it took, we can't determine. So it's kind of like a little, he didn't defend it this way I hoped. But the problem is, as soon as they take a stand for creationism, they're painted as a flat earther nut that doesn't believe in science.
Right.
And it's kind of a litmus test that they use now. Like, you don't believe in creationism, you can't be a serious candidate. You can't be a serious intellectual person.
Right. In fact, that is the reason I believe. That's a very good point. I think that's the reason they even ask that question, is because they want to ridicule right from the get-go and say, look, this guy can't be worthy of being a president. I mean, he's a nutbag Bible thumper who believes, you know, the world was created 6,000 or maybe even 100,000 or a million years ago. I mean, for crying out loud, really? You're going to vote this guy in office? That's the whole reason they even ask that kind of a question.
Yeah. Well, I feel, you know, I don't have the expertise to defend it as well as you do. I do lean towards probably believe in the young Earth rather than the old Earth, but I do believe that man was created as an intact, finished product by God. He did not evolve. God did not create us through evolution, and we are created a little piece by piece over a long period of time. That is totally absurd. To me, it boils down to this. The information in the cell proves that there is a God, because it can only come from a mind. And then irreducible complexity proves that Darwinism is impossible.
That's absolutely true. And I was in a debate recently with an atheist who said he had a master's degree in biology, and I called him out on his claims of evolution of the his RNA world hypothesis idea, as pointed out to him that look, all you're telling me is philosophy that you have absolute blind faith in. You cannot absolutely cannot account for the irreducible complexity between the machinery that reads the codes for proteins and the coating proteins in the DNA itself. Both have to exist simultaneously in the beginning, or there will be no cell. It has to coexist in the beginning. And when I pointed out that, of course, he was just espousing philosophy in which he had outrageous blind faith, they do what they always do, is they get very angry at you and they start talking over you endlessly. Artist, should I call you artist?
Yeah, if you want.
Okay. Do you believe evolution theory?
I don't believe it. I accept the facts for it and the evidence for it, as does the entire biological sciences community and other sciences that are in concordance with evolution.
Well, I'm glad you came in today, because I'm going to give you some scientific evidence that evolution has not only not happened, but it's actually genetically impossible.
Okay.
In fact, I'll go ahead and begin doing that. Here are some interesting facts. First, I'm going to paste in the text chat over here on the left, if you can see the text chat, a fairly recent paper from 2012, just 3 years old. And it states this, and this was published on ScienceDaily.com. This is a very heavy evolution promoting website, a very popular website for science. And they state this, and this is a quotation from a science study. In this new study funded by the Wellcome Trust and the National Institutes of Health, the researchers found that there was no overlap in the location of recombination hotspots between humans and chimpanzees. Scientists in the paper is titled, "Scientists Map Out Hotspots for Genetic Exchange in Chimpanzees." Now, what this is talking about is this. There are hundreds of locations in the genome of a human being or a chimpanzee, which are called recombination hotspots. And what they are is they're high activity areas where information is lifted from the DNA and recombined. And imagine, if you will, you're in a helicopter flying above a city, and let's say you're at 10,000 feet. And you notice an awful lot of cars coming and going from specific locations in the town. And as you drop in altitude, you get closer to the ground, you discover that these are convenience stores. That's where all this activity is going on, all these convenience stores throughout the town. You got regular traffic going on and everything, but there's an awful lot of cars coming and going from these particular locations. And you come down closer and you just, oh, those are convenience stores. Well, this is like the genetic hotspot locations in human DNA. There are locations in the DNA where a whole lot of genetic activity is going on, and there's hundreds of them, very specific locations. Now, what they've done is they've mapped the hotspot locations in the human genome, and the chimpanzee genome, and they find no overlap whatsoever. In other words, none of them match between humans and chimpanzees. Now, there's a great problem for evolution here, a real disprover, and it's this. That whenever genetic mutation translocates one of these hotspot locations, and this is observed, testable, repeatable science, the effect is very deleterious to the organism. It causes diseases, deformities, stillbirth, or failure to develop embryonically at all. So now, let's say at the very, it causes things, for example, like Down's syndrome. So let's imagine the scenario. Let's say a couple of millions. Hold on for just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the problem is this. Let's imagine that humans and chimpanzees diverged from a common ancestor, let's say 2.5 million years ago, as the evolutionists claim. You get various ages, depending on which scientist you speak to. Some will say as much as 4 million years. Some will say 1.5 million, but 2.5 million is a good average, somewhere around there. So let's say 2.5 million years ago, humans and chimpanzees were started off as two different populations diverging from this common ancestor that we both have. And these two populations are evolving and changing and producing other creatures, which will eventually produce chimpanzees on one side and humans on the other. That is the story that we get from the evolutionists. Now, it would have to be this, therefore, to explain the absence of overlap between the hotspot locations in humans and chimpanzees would have to have been mutagenesis. These recombination hotspot locations in the common ancestor would therefore, in the successive populations which will become human and chimpanzee, had to continuously be relocated at all time, constantly, over that 2.5 million years or so, or 1.5 million, whichever it may be, so that in the end, when we have chimpanzees and human beings, the hotspots don't overlap anymore, because they've been moved by genetic processes so that there is no longer an overlap between the two species. That's how it had to have happened, if it did happen. If human beings and chimpanzees have a common ancestor, the only way to explain the absence of overlap between any of these hotspot locations is mutagenesis. They had to have been moved by mutation. Change to the DNA over time has moved them all so that none of them overlap anymore. The problem with that is that it causes, that we know from observed medical science, when a hotspot location is relocated by mutation, it causes weaknesses, deformities, diseases, stillbirth, or a failure to develop whatsoever. So in this imagined time that human beings and chimpanzees were evolving, this process of moving these hotspot locations repeatedly by mutation would have made a species become so unfit for survival so quickly that they wouldn't have lasted anywhere near 500,000 years. They would simply go extinct. And this is called, and this is a great problem for evolution, like so many problems. It's actually called recombination hotspot paradox. That is what it is considered. And I'll paste for you a text, a quotation from a science paper. Here it is. And that paper is, I believe, I'll provide the reference for that in this next post in the text chat. I believe this is where I got that. It states, the problem of recombination hotspots has been a subject of theoretical studies, most of them focused on the explanation of hotspot survival in the context of the biased transmission caused by gene conversion. This problem is commonly known as the recombination hotspot paradox. In other words, it's a paradox. Why is it a paradox? It is a paradox because, on the one hand, we know the degradatory effects of moving hotspot locations by genetic processes, how it causes weaknesses, deformities, death, stillbirth, and failure to develop embryonically. On the other hand, it had to have happened if human beings and chimpanzees evolved from a common ancestor. In fact, if we evolved in any way you believe it, These hotspot locations had to have been moved by mutation. The problem is they cause disease, deformity, and death or failure to develop. So it's a paradox because the very thing that's supposed to have removed all of these hotspot locations in the human and chimpanzee genome is something that we know causes an organism to be completely unfit for survival, and would do so very quickly. If a single recombination hotspot location is moved by a mutation, it can cause something as drastic as Down syndrome. How many populations of creatures do you think are going to be fit for survival if they have accrued in their genetic information 10, just 10 hotspot relocations of the hundreds that had to happen? You see, just 10 should make that species go extinct. If an organism has Down syndrome, and then they get cancer, and then their population is prominent for this and for the other, and Tay-Sachs disease or whatever else might occur, how many of these kinds of horrifically destructive effects can an entire population have within them before natural selection just says, you're out? It wouldn't take long at all. So you see, what this information verifies for us is that the idea of human and chimpanzee common ancestry is impossible, because it would have had to have relocated all these hotspot locations, and so in so doing would have rapidly made both species, both populations, so unfit for survival you would never even get a chimpanzee or a human being. In fact, you wouldn't even get the precursor to the chimpanzee or human being. You'd be stuck way down the line. Shortly after the common ancestor, both populations would have become so unfit for survival they would simply go extinct. But the general public is not made aware of this kind of genetic information. And what the evolutionists do is they take this known facts, write it off as a paradox, and say, well, we can imagine maybe there's a fixer for it if we think about, we'll find a model that, well, we're going to try this and we'll try that and the other. They have no solution to it, but they talk about it as though it's not a problem at all. Truth is, it's absolutely destructive to the evolution theory. And the public is never made aware of this.
I would firstly suggest you go through and read the full paper, which I've brought up on my screen right here.
I skimmed through the entire paper. I read.
You should read through the entire thing, not just skim through it. Read through the entire thing.
I read enough of it to know that
especially
they have to it.
Especially the discussion is quite important to read, and it doesn't suggest what you're saying at all.
Well,
in the sense of disproving evolution.
Well,
because hold on, because of the crude misunderstanding of genetics, which is very apparent to me, in terms of not understanding what the terms mean and such. I would suggest you go through with that and then come back and then read through the paper again, because you've gotten quite a lot muddled up and it's just too much for me to explain at the current time, which is 5 in the morning here, I'm getting sleep. But I would suggest you go through and do so, because if this was to be interpreted in how you did, then these scientists would have gotten the Nobel Prize for disproving evolution. It's not what they're getting across. So I would suggest, first of all, going through the terminology and what the terms mean and what the jargon they're using, then reading through the paper again, the full paper, and then formulate your opinion on it, because I'm telling you, it's not suggesting what you're saying it is.
It actually does.
It
actually does. What you're alluding to, my friend, is that the researchers are not going to acknowledge that this is destructive to evolution theory, and that they write in their papers that they that they envision a model which at some point in the future will solve the paradox for them. They do not make any outright statements that they have solved the paradox, or that there is any discovery that has taken away the fact or changed the fact that it is a problem for their evolution theory. I've read enough of these kinds of papers to know. And
the problem is, though, people can read all the amount of papers in the world, but unless they don't actually understand the basics of biology, it will go over their head and it will be open to misinterpretation. And as someone who's done so, it's quite apparent to me that you've it's a lot of the jargon's pretty much gone over your head, and I saw that with respect because it's complex. You're learning a new terminology, and it's taken me a while to understand it during my studies. But yeah, I highly suggest you go through the terminology, then reread the study and what it's suggesting. Because I'm telling you right now that even if I was to go through to the Science Direct link right here, you'll see that the researchers and where it quotes them doesn't suggest that that they've disproven evolution at all. Otherwise, that would be the underlying that'll be included in the abstract and as well as in the discussion. It'll probably be mentioned in the title, and pretty much see this all over the news. So for those very observed reasons, that's not mentioned anywhere in the on Science Daily, which isn't a publisher. It's just a news source. It's credible and all, but it's not a journal. That would be this work here.
Well, I have studied these types of papers, and I've read through them, and I'm afraid that there's just no solution to the genetic problem found in them. There isn't. There are assumptions that they may find a model that will solve it, or that they have an ideas which may solve it. But do they actually state they have solved the issue? They absolutely do not. I just provided you a reference, a link here to a science paper called a haplotype map of the human genome. I'm going to read for you to explain how prevalent their explanation of the genetic problems with evolution are, even though they won't outright say so. I'm going to read for you the very first line in that paper. And this is the abstract. Inherent genetic variation is a critical, but as yet largely uncharacterized role in human disease. The first line, they acknowledge this process of evolutionary transition by genetic change is a problem because it creates disease. The first line in that abstract. Now, I don't know if from that something a light bulb ought to go on in your head. Why are they mentioning disease with a process that they say is an evolutionary process? The first thing they mention is this process causes disease. Now, if you think about it, what you'll realize is how much of this genetic change by these processes can take place by building disease-prone genetic genomes and have the organism remain viable. Well, it can't last forever, and it's not going to last millions of years. They say also, here we report, this is the second line in the paper, here we report a public database of common variation in the human genome, more than 1 million single nucleotide polymorphisms, for which a million. Now, so what they're saying is, when they sample different DNA from different peoples, different tribes of man, Japanese, Polynesians, whatnot, they discover that in the human genome there are at least 1 million single nucleotide polymorph mutations that have occurred. That's just what they know so far. There may be twice that many. They've identified 1 million. Now, if we go into and find out what are the effects, see, this is how you do honest genetics in study, and to find out the truth of evolution. If we go and study single nucleotide polymorph mutations and find out what the effects of them are, guess what we'll find? They're destructive. So they're talking about recombination has produced 1 million single SNP mutations in the human genome, which is destructive. And then you'll find science papers which describe that they're the cause of genetic mutations and deformities. But where is the statement in any of these secular papers that, oh, it's not a problem? Well, they don't say that. And here's the second paragraph of that same paper. Read quote for you. Despite the ever-accelerating pace of biomedical research, the root causes of common human diseases remain largely unknown. Preventative measures are generally inadequate, and available treatments are seldom curative. Family history is one of the strongest risk factors for nearly all diseases, including cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, autoimmunity, psychiatric illnesses, and others, providing a tantalizing but elusive clue to the inherent genetic variation has an important role in the pathogenesis of disease. What they're saying right there is human variation by default causes disease. And I'll tell you from a creationist point of view, that means ever since man was created, he has been diversifying genetically by single nucleotide polymorphs, and etc. And what this is doing is degrading our genome. It's causing diseases to build in mankind, and has since the fall of man, ever since man was made. Genetically from the beginning.
Can I just suggest reading the entire paper?
How
You're cherry picking.
When did I? How do you know that I have this particular paper? How much of it have I read? Do you know?
By the way, you're cherry picking the very tops. A few sentences. It's quite clear. Probably haven't read the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I have read probably 60% of it.
Read the entire thing.
So
give me a basic rundown.
When you have read 100% of it, you come back and find me the paper. There's a statement in it, please, that says that this process is not a problem for the degradation of the human genome.
It has. It doesn't touch on.
Are you sure that there's such a statement in this paper?
I'm going through it right now, quite literally.
Are you going to find one?
And it's about identification.
But if you can find such a statement in this paper,
I suggest you go to the section on insights into recombination and natural selection.
Okay, let me find that. Right. I'm looking for it. How far down in the paper?
Do you even know what genetic hotspots are?
What have I just been talking about? Were you listening to
me? Give me the definition of a genetic hotspot.
Did you not hear my discussion about it? That was the first thing I started speaking about.
Not really.
You didn't, but you weren't listening. So
no, I was going through the paper.
Was there a statement that you wanted me to read in this paper somewhere that you think
is going through it right now? So I'm just saying, read that whole entire section.
A solution.
Read the entire section.
Well, I don't see a section called what you say. What you?
I'm just saying, read the entire section.
I'm sorry.
Read the entire thing.
The entire paper. No, I'm not going to take time to do that right now.
Because you got the whole point right here where I'm highlighting here.
Well, it's too small for me to read on that scale. I can't actually make out what's on your screen.
Well, you linked it. Then all you have to do is just hit to the DOE of the paper, and it'll pop up to the natures.
I'm going to pull it up in Internet Explorer because it's much easier to search inside a document with Internet Explorer than it is with Firefox. It's a much better search. Okay, insights, huh? Okay.
So you're saying evolution isn't a science?
I'm not finding a title in the paper. No, it's not science. It's philosophy and faith.
Why the scientific journals on that? If I go to Nature, which is where this piece is published in, Nature Publishing Group is the publisher, and this is published in which?
So, but where's the?
So let's have a look at, because Nature's got an impact factor. Last time I checked, of 48.8 or something like that. So let's go through and look at their journal, shall we?
What is it that you're expecting to find? Continuous support for the idea of evolution found in the papers because they're published by scientists who believe it. What you need.
Well, so hold on. First, you got to understand that the piece you gave me, which you brutally misunderstood.
No,
trust me, you have.
No, wait. Before you continue,
hold on. No. I'll let you talk for a while.
I want for you to tell me what it is I misunderstood before we continue. Tell me what it is that I misunderstood.
I'll do so later.
No, I wish for you to do it now.
I'll do so later on.
You said so repeatedly that I've misunderstood the paper. What is it that I have misunderstood?
Read the whole paper.
No, you haven't. You can't tell me what it is that I've misunderstood. If you can't do that,
I can. Yeah, I can.
Why are you claiming that I've misunderstood?
You've selected the first 2 or 3 sentences.
Well, I've read through the paper. So
I'm
what
sure
is
you
it
have.
that I've misunderstood about it?
I'm gonna go into the claim here that biology, evolution isn't a part of biology and thus isn't a science. So that paper was published in Nature. So when you head over to Nature and then you look in through their journals, you'll find how many papers, journals they have that are on evolutionary topics. And this is their entire list.
There'll be many. So what does that prove? That there are scientists who write about evolution a lot. But what is it that
it has actual repercussions in medicine and biology.
What is it that I have misunderstood about the paper?
What it's getting across with tagging genetic alleles and such. You're pretty much assuming that with genetics that what we have in common with other species is that it's, say, 99%, for example, just throwing numbers out there, that it's compatible with humans, and then that you think that all the genes are perfectly matching up between the species when that's not the case.
No, I've never said that.
That's pretty much what you're getting across, because that's what the prior paper was saying, that you're going to find different hotspots in different areas.
Yes, so they acknowledge that there are different, that the hotspots.
Hold on, that's because
they don't overlap. How is that support for evolutional?
That's not what the claim ever was in evolution. You're going to have matches, but of course they're not always going to be in the same spot.
Well, they're obviously not.
That's an inherent misunderstanding of evolutionary genetics in general.
No, it's not a misunderstanding. I simply pointed out that the hotspot locations in human and chimpanzee genomes do not overlap. That's what I pointed out, and
that doesn't disprove evolution.
And it does. It does
because that's not how genetics works.
It does.
They don't integrate in the same location.
It does because if they came from a common ancestor, the resulting species. The fact that their recombination hotspots are entirely different means that from the common ancestor they have been moved many times over, so that
because we do have differences between us and chimpanzees.
That's right. So wouldn't it be true then, if we came from a common ancestor which had its hotspot locations, the fact that humans and chimpanzees do not overlap means in the resulting populations that ultimately produce chimpanzees and humans, these recombination hotspots had to have been moved repeatedly until they are where they are in both species. Is that not true? Otherwise, they would have the same hotspot locations. But they
don't even have the same locations.
Isn't that true, that they would have to have been moved, right?
Just by genetic drift.
Right. By mutation.
And again, if this was somehow to show that evolution was wrong, then why isn't that the main conclusion mentioned in the abstract or the title? Why haven't they won a Nobel Prize?
Well, it is acknowledged to be a paradox. It's called the recombination hotspot paradox. So, I gave you the science paper. It's called Hotspots of Genetic Rearrangement, Findings in Mice, etc. Here it is. Okay, so if what are the effects now? This is what we need to consider. What are the effects of relocating a genetic hotspot location by genetic change? That's what we need to look at to see if it's plausible that evolution has produced chimpanzees and human beings. We need to know what is the effect upon the organism of this recombination hotspot location moving. What is it? What are the known effects of that? And the acknowledgement in the paper that I just, the first one that I provided, is that it causes a host of diseases. Now, are you telling me that you believe that evolution produced viable species fit for survival by continuously fixing in their genome disease-causing mutation, such as.
It's dependent on the mutations themselves.
Right. So that's why I say
not all mutations. Hold on, not all mutations are going to produce disease, such as how we have skin color. Do you know how we have skin color?
We're not talking about changes in melanoma. I'm talking about the movement of
melanoma.
I'm talking about the movement.
This is a key. This is.
Wait,
this
I'm
is
talking
key.
about what we're talking about is the.
Yes, I'm aware, but this is a good indicator of your understanding of genetics.
What I'm talking about is the movement of recombination hotspots. What is the effects of
that?
that?
You understand how we have different skin color. This will give me a gauging idea of how much you understand about genetics.
You're moving the goalpost. The subject is.
No, I'm going to go back to this. Is just
no.
Water.
I'm going to stick with it. What do we
how
need
much?
to know what
how
the
much do you understand about? Not all deletions and mutations are going to be disease causing.
What do you understand about the effects upon an organism of the moving of a recombination hotspot by mutation? Do you know what it
depends on? It depends on what that hotspot's for.
Do you know what
it's not always going to be disease causing. Again, it depends on the gene.
Do you know what is written about it and said about it by the science papers in the journals?
It depends on the gene you're talking about. It could be positive, it could be negative, it could have no effect whatsoever. What depends on the gene you're talking about?
No, it's not believed to have no effect whatsoever. No.
It could have benefit or negative effect. It depends on what the gene is and what it's coding for, what protein it's coding for.
No, it's not known to have benefit. The movement of recombination hotspots.
It depends on the gene.
Let me finish, please. The movement of recombination hotspots by mutation is not known to have any benefit and is known only to produce a degradatory effect. That is what is written of thoroughly about them
in that paper.
In any paper that discusses the effects of it, that observed effects. See, and I'll provide you with another haplotype. In that same paper, a haplotype of the human genome, they say, these data document the generality of recombination hotspots, a block-like structure of linkage disequilibrium, and low haplotype diversity, leading to substantial correlations of single nucleotide polymorphs with many of their neighbors. In other words, when these single nucleotide polymorphs affect these hotspot locations, they drag with them a degradatory effect to the neighboring genes as well, to alleles that are related to those genes. So it's not only damage, it's compound damage. It not only affects one gene, it affects entire sets of genes by moving them. And the machinery that reads them is now one scratching its head. Where did it go? It's moved. It's not where it's supposed to be. I don't know where to find my information. This doesn't look like it. This seems like something different. And the results of that is disease. That's what's going on. And that's what is thoroughly written about and documented in the science journal.
It depends what the proteins, the genes synthesize, what protein it's coding for.
Well, as I've said, what they write
about. Here I've pulled up the actual protein on the protein data bank in Europe.
So what they write about is a degradatory effect. They do not write about a positive effect, and they do not write that these mutations that move genetic hotspot locations are neutral. They don't write that they're neutral. They write only that they produce degradatory effects. Whenever an effect is observed relating to the mutation of one of these, it's always a negative. That's the only thing they ever observe. And so the problem is great for evolution. How can the hotspot locations of humans and chimpanzees be moved so they're entirely different, producing viable species when we know that?
Because you have different environmental factors that infect genetics. Again, such being elevation and geographical location with light, and how we have different skin color. That's just one example.
Okay, so all you're telling me is that you have faith that somehow, although it's been well documented that they're a negative and they cause disease, and
it could have negative effects. Yes, I'm not saying it could, but it depends on the protein.
So you're saying you have faith that
you know what a protein is?
Wait, let me finish. you're saying that you have faith that somehow, even though they're only written about as being negative, that the science, what they're writing about in the papers, is really a limited amount of information, and the truth is that the majority of them are neutral or provide a benefit. Is that what you're trying to say?
It could be beneficial. Some deletions are beneficial.
Can you show us that the mutations which affect the hotspot locations in the genome can be beneficial, please?
All right. Where is it? Gotta think of the paper. GMOs. GMOs. Where are you? No, I suggest you read this piece. This is a beneficial mutation over time with a parasite and the wasp.
No, we're talking about the mutation.
This is an example. This is an example because genetics are the same throughout.
It's moving the goalpost. You're moving.
No, it's not. It's giving a different example of a different genetics of a different specimen.
No, you're moving the goalpost. The subject is
moving the goalpost.
The subject is recombination hotspot locations and how they got where they are, which had to have taken place by genetic change, genetic mutation, which moves them, and what are the observed effects in organisms? The scientific.
Well, here's an example.
Right.
Here's a beneficial example of genetic recombination in the wild.
Okay. Does this relate to the movement of a hotspot location?
Not for humans, but for genetics in general, yes, it does.
It relates to the movement of a hotspot location to a different location in the genome?
Mm-hmm.
It does?
I would suggest you read that paper, and that will give an example of a benefit.
Okay, let me look at that and see if it actually says what you claim that it does.
Then you've also got recent fossils being found of a new species.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
I'm sorry I interrupted. I'm just saying hi.
That's all good. Is this the debate you were meant to have, or co-host, or whatever it was with Evan?
I'm looking in that paper, and there is I've highlighted the word hotspot. Hold on.
It doesn't talk about hotspots, but it talks about genetic mutation and recombination.
Okay, so what you need to do is find a paper that discusses hotspot locations and show me the evidence that this is not degradatory.
It depends on the gene.
Well,
you're confusing so hard what genes do.
No,
do you know what genes do?
I'm not doing any such thing. I'm the subject.
What do genes do?
What you're doing is conflating and moving the goalpost. I want you to understand this. I want you to understand this. The subject of this hangout is recombination hotspot locations and the effects of mutation and moving them, and the potential for evolution to be true based on this scientific discovery. Okay, so stop talking about melanomin. Stop talking about other species.
Melanoma is a cancer.
Listen. Allow me to finish, please. That's the subject of this hangout. Now, pointing to what you believe is a beneficial mutation, and there is no such thing as a genuinely beneficial mutation.
Oh, that's one example I just gave you.
Some other creature, not related to recombination hotspot locations, is moving the goalpost. I'm talking about one piece of evidence.
It's giving a different example of true genetics.
I'm pointing to one particular piece of evidence that discredits evolution theory. That's the subject.
It doesn't. Otherwise, it would have been mentioned in the abstract and the title, and they would have got a Nobel Prize.
Then show me the evidence that it does.
This doesn't disprove evolution.
Well, I've explained to you why it does. Because the recombination hotspot locations cannot have been moved hundreds of times and produce a viable species.
Why not? Tell me why not. Why can't they be moved?
Okay, listen carefully to me. I've already said this about 7 times, all right? I'm going to do it once more. I'm not going to repeat myself for you, all right? It is observed that when the recombination hotspots in an organism are moved by genetic mutation, the result is negative. It causes disease and deformity, or failure to develop embryonically. That is the scientific, tested, observed, repeated, observed effects of the movement of a hotspot location by mutation. That's a science fact. Now, if you don't believe that, then you don't believe the science papers in the journals on the matter. I don't care what conclusion they come to and say, well, evolution's true anyway.
The conclusion's the most important piece.
No, it's not. That's a face of
It's
evolution.
the summary of the entire work.
It is the observed effect that is scientific. That is the observed effect. That is what is scientific, and that's what we must go by. What we know this process causes. That is the science at hand. So
you're quoting from which paper of it somehow causes diseases? Depending on the gene, of course. Which one was that?
So I provided a couple already. Why do I have to repeat myself for evolution?
Because you're confusing genes.
Scroll back up to the
text. You don't understand genes do different things.
Go back up to the text. I provided 2 science papers.
Yes, but one's talking about a specific gene, in particular the PRDM9 gene.
It's talking about
on Protein Data Bank.
They talk about more than that. They talk about the effects of these things, a recombination and mutations.
And on the CPG island.
Okay, well, they state that they cause disease.
That's a specific gene.
They cause disease. That is the recurring, constant statement in these papers whenever they discuss the observation that hotspot locations have been relocated by mutation. They always mention disease. Always. So what you need to do is tell us why you believe in your faith that it continues.
Because there's evidence of human evolution. That doesn't discredit it. Again, otherwise they would have gotten the Nobel Prize for that piece. And again, this was published in 2007?
No.
2012.
No, they wouldn't get any prize for any such thing.
Yes, they would.
But what you need to do.
That's the whole purpose of the scientific method.
So let's get this.
Hold on.
Are you telling me that Are you telling me that you believe that the continuous movement of
depends on the gene? It depends on the gene entirely.
Can you find me a science paper? Can you find me a science paper that says that some considerable
for that particular gene? Probably not. But then I could find another gene that probably has.
Okay, great. Here's what you need to do, though.
Oh my God.
You need to provide science papers that show that there is some considerable percentage of these movement of these hotspot locations which is known to be non-negative or neutral. Can you find that? Because you will not be able to find that.
Mm-hmm.
The consensus is that it's observed.
Well, if you're going to say it's a consensus, you've got to provide an explanation for it.
Well, I provided you two.
That's not a consensus.
I provided you 2 which state that they are commonly associated with genes. With disease. Okay, and so you're welcome to believe that it doesn't, but that's not scientific.
May I comment?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Was this hangout for everybody or just a simple debate?
Yeah,
sure. Anybody can come in and discuss the matter.
Okay, well, I got a question. Hey, Neffy, I was waiting for Ken Hogan to email me. I had him on my channel.
Okay.
I was gonna say, do you know any atheists that are really good, like doctorate level people, if we could, for the debate?
I'm a third year bachelor in biomedicine. I'm in lab tech.
You're a lab tech?
Specializing in pathology, yes.
Okay, well, I'm waiting for him to respond. It's going to be creation and evolution debate, so I was going to ask you, can I have you on the thing?
When is he looking for it? Well,
I'm waiting for him to respond to me, but I do have proof, though, that he emailed me that Well, his assistant.
No, I don't question your validity, but it's like
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just looking for someone that just ripped that.
yeah, it's pretty much 6 o'clock right here. So
I'm
I'm
gonna be
not
hosting.
really up for. I'm struggling with Dollmate here because I mean he doesn't get genetic hotspots at all.
Okay, here's just for fun. Here's another paper I just happened to find real quick, and I'll give you the link to it, and then I'll read for you what they say. The very first, the title of the paper is Distribution of Recombination Hotspots in the Human Genome, a comparison of computer simulations with real data, abstract, they state. Recombination is the main cause of genetic diversity. Thus, errors in this process can lead to chromosomal abnormalities. Recombination events are confirmed to narrow chromosome regions called hotspots in which characteristic DNA motifs are found. Genomic analysis have shown that both recombination hotspots and DNA motifs are distributed unevenly along human chromosomes and are much more frequently in the sub-telomeric regions of the chromosomes than in the central parts. Okay, so already in the very
Errors can occur that could lead to disease. Yes.
Right.
Not all of them would be.
Right.
Depends on the gene.
Right. So.
And again, as it explains here, that they're spread unevenly. Nowhere has evolution ever said that they'll be spread evenly.
It tends to narrow them. So by this continuous narrowing of them, we see a degradatory effect. You know, you can't do that forever. Not very long, in fact. You can do that very much, and you've got an organism which is unfit for survival. See, the observed effect is one thing. What the evolutionist believes is possible is another.
Again, you're just wow. Oh, too early to.
So, but the evolutionist has blind faith that
there's no such thing as an evolutionist.
The evolutionist has blind faith that what is observed to be destructive.
Not blind faith. I've got a paper pulling up here on.
Artist, hold on. Let me finish what I'm speaking. We're not going to talk over each other continuously. I'll unmute you in a moment. What the evolutionist believes is one thing, and what's recorded in the journals is another. The evolutionist has a lot of blind faith that somehow what is highly documented as causing destructive effects, such as disease, is somehow not a problem for evolution. And that's just that's a non-scientific way to approach things. The evolutionist is actually in denial of what science has discovered about these things that evolutionists claim are processes of evolution, when we know today they're so well documented as destructive. They're related to disease. And you can't constantly build diseases in organisms and claim it's constantly producing viable species which natural selection is going to continuously select for. How is that possible when these mutations that become and narrow recombination hotspots are continuously accruing and getting more of them in the genome? Hundreds of them, when we know that a single one can cause a disease. Just one. And there are hundreds of recombination hotspots in the human genome. Hundreds. So how many hundreds of disease-ridden genes, critical genes, and not only individual ones, but sets of genes, entire packs of alleles related to recombination hotspots, how much of this damage can accrue before natural selection would say you're out? The evolutionist believes it won't ever happen. But the science journals continuously report a degradatory effect to the genome because of these things. So the evolutionist's belief system is pitted against actual science. Do you see?
Oh my God, that's exactly why I see evolution on a daily basis. Quite literally in the lab, I see it on a daily basis, and you're telling me it's not legit. Wow.
Here's a statement from the very paper. They say, and I quote, "We assume that the hotspot paradox is solved, and it is possible to reach an equilibrium in appearance and disappearance of hotspots." We assume that. In other words, for their paper, to go through their paper, they have to simply assume that the problem is not pervasive and that it's solved somehow for them to even do their research, because if they were to accept what this paradox for what it is, there would be even no point in doing their research. They have to assume that it's not a critical problem just to do the research. It's very telling, and I'll read that again. I quote, "We assume that the hotspot paradox is solved, and it is possible to reach an equilibrium in appearance and distribution and disappearance of hotspots. Therefore, we elaborate a Monte Carlo model of eukaryotic chromosome evolution that allows self-organization and spatial distribution of recombination events in genes responsible for individuals' adaptation and also their defective alleles subjective to negative selection." So that is so telling. I'll paste that into the text. That is just the most telling thing. What they're saying is, we assume somehow the problem is solvable, but just to believe in evolution. Now, you can unmute yourself, artist, if you want to, with the button at the top. But do you see that? I'm going to put that right here in the text chat. They have to assume that this critical problem for evolution is not actually a problem so that they can do the research. That is so telling. That's like saying, I assume that my car is not doing 90 miles an hour down the highway so I can step out of it without getting killed. That's the faith of evolutionism right there.
Oh, could you stop calling it evolutionism and such? That's making every scientist cry around the world. You don't understand the basics of what you're talking about. Have you done any science besides what you did in high school? Have you?
That's
have you? Have you?
Irrelevant to the subject.
No, that's actually very relevant. Have you taken the basics in genetics?
No, it's irrelevant to the subject.
Have you done any basics in genetics?
That question doesn't warrant a response.
Quite literally, you're throwing out tons. I've already given you a few journals from Nature.
None of them explain the paradox is solved, by the way.
Huh?
Show me one that says the paradox is solved.
It's irrelevant. It doesn't disprove evolution because otherwise it would have been shown that. They would have gotten the Nobel Prize for that.
No, I just provided for you a quotation by a paper from a science paper.
It doesn't disprove evolution.
In which they have to assume that the paradox doesn't even exist just to do the research. Otherwise, there would be no point, because it would be illogical to believe that recombination hotspot location movement could have produced viable species, and there's no point in even considering our models or ideas. They admit that right there. It's so telling.
Well, a hotspot simply means a specific area of a strand of DNA that's undergone a lot of recombination. How do you not get that?
I don't know. What do you think I'm supposed to get? I'm giving you what the papers themselves.
You literally don't understand what recombination hotspot is.
Really?
Yes.
That's why I'm talking about it.
You're talking about it, but you don't understand it. That's like me talking about string theory. I can read from a paper, but I'm not going to understand any of it because I'm just reading from without actually understanding the material itself.
You know, evolutionists do this all the time.
There's no such thing as evolutionists. I see evolution on a daily basis.
When a creationist points out problems with evolution theory, the evolutionists almost
there's no problems with evolution.
They continuously claim, "Oh, you don't understand what you're talking about," as though that's
we have wow.
That's why you believe what you do, because you know.
Okay, so why isn't creationism in any science journals? Why isn't it a science?
You know, if what you said about me not understanding it was true, you should be able to provide for me a science paper that says this paradox, the hotspot paradox, has been solved. Why are you not able to do it?
It's irrelevant.
Well, hold
on.
To simply say it's irrelevant? How is it irrelevant when it causes disease?
It's simply a piece of DNA that's undergone a lot of recombinations. So what?
If it causes
it could be anything. It could be to surrounding factors. It could be to radiation. It could be the other factors. It just means it's gone under a lot of cases of recombination or deletion or
Artist,
mutation.
let me ask you a question. If this process of moving recombination hotspots is known to be associated with disease, can you tell me why it's irrelevant to evolution?
It depends on the proteins that we're talking about. So the genes that we're talking about and the proteins that code.
All right, so it depends. So what you're saying is that you know for a fact that so many of these actually do not have a negative effect, and they're not associated with disease. Isn't that exactly contrary to what the science papers are saying?
Well, they're talking about specific genes. I don't understand what you don't get. They're talking about specific genes.
No, I don't understand what you're not getting. I'll say it in very simple terms so it can't be obfuscated. When scientists write in their papers what the effects of the observed
they're talking about these effects, but they're not saying it disproves evolution.
The effects of moving recombination hotspots by mutation. They mention disease, that this is associated with a host of diseases.
If it particularly did, then yes, it could have. It would have.
Now my question then is, why is it that you believe a process known to continuously produce disease is not a problem for evolution?
Because it depends on the specific gene area that you're talking about. Again, the paper even shows you what island it's talking about.
Are you saying that there is
it's talking about the CPG island.
What percentage do you believe of recombination hotspot movements due to mutations do not cause disease?
I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, good, because
I don't have my my genome printed out.
It's all of them. They don't know of any that do not cause disease. There is no such thing as one that doesn't. They don't know of anything like that. What they know is they are associated with disease. That's it. They do not know of the movement of hotspot locations caused by mutations that do not cause disease. That is the problem for evolution.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, please do.
Okay, well, I used to be a big evolution believer before I became a Christian. I used to be a very big one. But I just started noticing when I started researching a little more, how come there is a fact that, okay, I see what Neffy's trying to say and I see what you're trying to say. Like, you asked him earlier, has he done anything besides science? People can still learn things outside of school because there's a lot of other misleading information in colleges and everywhere. You got to determine the facts, or you got to analyze both sides, and you got to see which is true. You compare both and connect the dots. But I could understand what you're talking about. Like, okay, like there's changes of kind. Yes, there's changes of kind. But the fact is, with creationists, the reason they're on this, they're trying to figure this more out. They'll be all like, well, there's really no proof for macroevolution.
Yeah.
So you're aware that you need to walk steps to get to a mile, don't you? So eventually, after enough genetic mutation, there's going to be a point where a species can't have offspring with its predecessor.
Well,
you have a new species.
I'm aware of that.
It takes, in quote unquote, microevolution to reach macroevolution. It's not like a cat. It's not like a dog's gonna give birth to a cat. That's not gonna happen. Nowhere does evolution say that would happen. So that indeed would disprove evolution. So,
I understand what you're trying to say, but it's just saying that, okay, say for example, I've talked to many atheists. I've came from a group of atheists. My best friend was an atheist. Like, I used to accept all this stuff without really no questioning it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Like, it's just, I understand.
Where did you question from? What did you? Were you researching from scientific literature, not creation.com and other such that?
Well, there's some other stuff.
nephew would use.
There's other places like Nova. I've noticed that there's some. Okay, say for instance,
Yeah,
like,
they're not really. Nova's good, but they're not a scientific journal.
well, I'm just saying I understand, but I'm just saying there's other types of sources that promote evolution. There's like HAP Science and etc. There's a lot of these people that promote all this stuff. I've always loved science. It's just that you literally look into it and you start questioning. Let me give you an example. The Big Bang. There's flaws in that. A lot of flaws and stuff like that. There's a lot of flaws in that, and then also the theory of relativity. There's flaws in the theory of relativity. Research Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, the idea that of macroevolution being caused by countless microevolutionary changes is simply not a supportable idea. But artist, I would ask you to consider. I provided you just a couple of the countless examples. I guess there are probably many dozens in the science journals which associate recombination.
Once more, you are confusing the point of
excuse
genes.
me. I'm not confusing anything.
Yes, you are.
I've even pointed out that when mutation does this, it has a degradatory effect to surrounding
It could be beneficial.
Well, it could be. See, this is the thing I'm asking you to consider. Why is it that you believe it could be beneficial when it's never been demonstrated to be anything but negative?
It depends on the protein you're talking about.
Well, how does it depend on the protein? Where do you get this?
Proteins. So genes code for different proteins, and proteins do different jobs.
Where's the science paper that reports that it's not negative?
It depends on the gene. Holy shit! Quite literally, it depends on the gene. You are aware. Do you know how genetics works?
Do you know of any scientist that has reported in the journals when referring to genetic hotspot relocation by mutation that it's been observed?
No, I don't know any, but you must understand that in the gene, in the DNA, genes
why do you believe that
proteins.
Why do you believe that it cannot be?
It could be good or bad. It depends on the genes we're talking about.
Why is it that you believe it can be good?
This specific one is talking about this gene here, PRDM9.
Okay,
in the island of in the island of what was it? CPG. So it's coding for something, right?
Is that an example of a movement of a recombination hotspot?
That's the paper you talked to, the fine scale chimpanzee one. That's the one you linked me. It's talking about a specific gene in a specific location.
Is it talking about?
It doesn't prove anything.
In that quote that you're talking about, is it discussing the observed effect of the movement of a recombination hotspot by mutation, or is it
simply no? It's simply talking about the island. It's okay. So
is it or is it not talking about the movement of hotspot location?
Recombination is dominated by hotspots, which show no overlap with humans, even though rates are. Hold on.
My question is very simple.
Evaluated around the CPG island. This is saying that there's no overlap in that specific area. It's like it said in that prior study that you linked, that it's not even, that there's no homogeneous sharing between genes. They're all over the place. That's what you're not understanding. In specific areas, there may not be an overlap because that's just how genetics are. They're all over the place in that sense.
You're not
nowhere in hold on. Nowhere in evolution does it say that if I compare myself to a plant and say my own DNA, that 30% of the bottom half of my chromosome is going to be matching exactly with that plant. That's not how it works. So with your misconstrued understanding of genetics and evolution, of course this is going to somehow disprove it, because in a sense it's a straw man, because you don't understand how genetics works.
What I'm asking you is what is this particular gene that you mentioned? In their discussion of that gene, are they discussing the observed effect of the relocation of a genetic hotspot by mutation?
With no hotspots sharing between the two species consistent with earlier reports, based on limited data. The complete lack of hotspot sharing is consistent with the hypothesis that in humans, PRDM9 plays a critical role in localizing crossover activity at all hotspots, not just those that contain clear matches to previously identified motifs bound by the PRDM9. In spite of the dramatic shift in hotspot locations between the two species, we found that some fine-scale patterns, particularly in the average profile of recombination rate around genes and CPG islands, remain similar, pointing to the importance of chromatation state in influencing where double-strand breaks occur, or in additional levels of control acting on broader scales. A notable difference between the species is that in chimpanzees, no repeat elements, simple DNA motifs, or replicated predicted PRDM9 binding sites are strongly or consistently associated with hotspot locations.
Okay, so what you just read.
Hold on.
No, wait, hold on. You've read enough. The problem
No. I'm reading
no, wait a minute. I'm not going to let you read the entire paper. The point is this: what they're talking about in that discussion that you are just now reading does not mention anything about. It does not mention the movement of a recombination hotspot location by a mutation, and that is what the subject is.
Three possible explanations. First, PRDM9 may have lost its role in the specifying, I'll say now, hotspot locations in chimpanzee, as has occurred in dogs, although we find no evidence for indicating mutations.
What was that word you used a while ago? I forgot. Sorry.
Which was? Okay. Second, PRDM9 alleles may have similar specificity to target DNA sequences, but the substantial allele diversity and the possible recent origin may obscure signals for individual alleles. However, this hypothesis cannot be explained when the density and strength of hotspots at that population level are similar in African populations and Western chimpanzees.
Okay. Nothing.
Hold on.
You're not going to read the whole paper. No.
I'm reading the discussion.
You're not going to read the entire paper. I'm sorry.
I'm not reading the entire paper. I'm reading
what you have just read, there is no explanation whatsoever about the observed effect of a movement of a hotspot location by mutation.
It gave you 3 explanations.
No, it did not. It did not. It's not even discussing.
Okay, I'll screen share again.
It's not discussing the effects, the observed effect of a recombination hotspot location being moved.
Where is it?
So that's all you're doing is thinking that by reading a lot of the paper, you're somehow going to make a convincing argument. Look.
There are 3 possible explanations.
All you're doing is talking about. You think that by reading, continuously reading the paper, somehow you're providing an argument that is.
No, hold on. You don't understand.
You haven't done any such thing.
You don't understand the papers. You don't understand the basics of genetics.
No.
I do. So I'm reading the paper because I'm reading the discussion.
I'm getting bored. I'm getting bored with you, Arnett.
Because you don't understand.
I'm going to mute you because I can't speak without you talking over me for now. I got to say something here. I'm getting bored. I asked you for evidence.
What you're getting bored of?
I asked you for evidence that it's been observed.
I'm going through the paper and
you're not finding anything. You're not finding anything that states what you say you believe. I'm
reading the discussion.
Look, stay muted for 30 seconds or I'll kick you out of the room. I have to say a thing, okay? So you're not providing anything that discusses the observed effect of a movement of a mutation, of a hotspot location by mutation. That is the subject that we are discussing. Reading the paper endlessly does not provide that. What I want you to do is find for me a science paper that has a statement in it that states that we have discovered the movement of a hotspot location by genetic mutation that did not have a degradatory effect on the organism. When you find that, you'll have something. Until then, you have nothing.
I have nothing. Wow, thanks for butchering the basis of biology. Wow.
May I have a question?
Again, go on.
I was just gonna say what was that? I forget. I haven't used that. I haven't heard that term for a while. The term you just used a while ago. You and the nephews. I forgot that term. It started with a C.
Concordance?
No, not that one. I could comprehend the science. I can. It's just I'm trying to figure out that term. I just forgot about it.
What's it related to?
Hold on. You're talking about hold on. I already know. I know the stuff in the legal frequencies. Something else. I forgot what it was called.
Changes to allele frequency.
I'll have to rewind the hangout.
Changes to allele frequency.
No, I know what that is. I already know what that is.
Okay.
So.
Recombination hotspots.
No, not that.
Third, PRDM9 may play the same role as in humans and mice, but individual PRDM9 alleles may bind to a much greater variety of target sequences than do the prominent human alleles. If so, hotspot localization in chimpanzees may be more strongly driven by other factors, such as retained state. Whichever the hypothesis is correct, one consequence is that across the genome, no motif in chimpanzees will be strongly targeted for depletion. Sorry? Depletion by the inherent self-destructive drive of hotspots, although specific instances may be. Our results also reveal that different processes that operate at the fine and broad scales. At broad scales, we find substantial correlation in the recombination rate between species. That right there shows evolution. We find substantial correlation in recombination between species.
No, that doesn't. That just means
also,
that the genomes of various species are mutating at roughly the same rate. That's all that means.
Correlation of recombination rate. Sorry, true. Which is distributed by chromosomal rearrangement. However, even among conserved regions, less than 40% variance, chimpanzees, combination rate, and 1 B.
Right. So, chromosomal rearrangement, do you know what that does? That's it's also a negative. That's also creates disease.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
It does. It causes disease.
Hey, why don't you record some of your stuff in the lab if you could put it on YouTube?
I suppose I could.
Chromosomal rearrangements cause disease too. That's called genetic translocations of chromosomes, and recombination of chromosomes is a known disease producer.
Do you know? There's a recent publication in PNAS on the tree of life through genetics. It was redone. So that shows common ancestry.
Excuse me. No, nothing for common ancestry.
That tree map does. I'll try and find it again.
There's no such thing as common ancestry.
Well, okay then.
Let me give you some information about this. What you just said, translocation.
Don't talk to
I'm going to provide something in here. Here's a science paper: human chromosome translocations in cancer. Okay. So it causes cancer. Here's an explanation of balanced translocations and the diseases that they cause. There's another. So you say I don't know what I'm talking about, but gee,
no, you don't.
Information.
Again, you're reading from papers without understanding.
And here's
what
another.
They're saying.
Here's another. Pre-implantation genetic diagnosis for couples with Robertsonian translocation.
Stop quote mining. I can point to studies that show evolution published in much more credible science journals and even from Nature.
Here's another. Spatial dynamics of chromosome translocation in living cells.
Without understanding.
No, I've read these, every one of them.
But you don't understand what they're saying. You don't understand the terminology used.
I've read every single one of them.
No, I don't care. You haven't.
A
You don't
glossary
understand
of
the basics.
genetics, home reference, translocation.
What's
Every one of these
tRNA?
describes. Every one of these.
What's tRNA?
Every one of these
What's
describes.
tRNA?
Every one of these describes the negative effect upon the genome of an organism when translocation occurs. And here's another one.
If something wrong happens to the gene, yes, you'll get cancer because it will start proliferating out of control. Yes, so fucking what? You're missing the point.
So what? Is this process that is claimed to
No, oh my god, son.
Excuse me. This process that has supposedly created the diversity of living things on a tree of life, such as human beings.
Depends on the gene.
I'm getting being talked over, artist. It's got to be a discussion here. You have to let other people speak.
It depends on the gene.
It is well documented that translocations are the cause of genetic disorders. They are not known to not cause a negative. Not known. It's not depend on the gene. It depends on whether or not it happens.
Do you know what genes do?
Do you know what a translocation is? It's not related to a specific.
Do you know what genes do, Nephilim?
It's not related to a single gene.
Do you know what genes do? Yes or no?
Do you know that translocation?
I think he knows what it is. I'm not trying to defend him, but I'm just saying I think he knows what they do.
Do you?
He really doesn't. What are they protein? What are they code for?
Artist, do you know?
What do they code for?
I can't talk to this guy. He can't have a conversation. I kicked him. He can't have a discussion. He just wants to endlessly talk over me.
Oh, hey, nephew.
You know, I hate doing that, but, you know, if you can't have a discussion with somebody, what the hey?
You know? Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
I forgot what was that term. I forgot what it was.
Wait, before you do that, let me point out something for anybody listening as to why I kicked the guy. First, I was unable to have a conversation with him for about 20 minutes now, and that's what it's going to result to. When evolutionists are challenged with real science, they get very angry and they don't want to ever stop talking over you. So there wasn't not going to be any more casual discussion with him. Now, he said it depends on the gene. I was talking about translocations, genetic translocations, okay, and chromosomal rearrangement. He said it depends on the gene. That doesn't even make sense. These processes don't move a single gene. They move hundreds or thousands of genes, and they break genes. So what does he mean by it depends on the gene? There is no single gene involved in a translocation. There are hundreds of them, if not thousands and thousands. So that doesn't even make sense. Why did he say it depends on the gene? What in the world? Translocations don't relate to a single gene. They relate to many genes. I'm not sure he understood what a translocation is. Anyway, I would have liked to have had a casual conversation with the fellow, but there was no discussion with him. He had gotten challenged and upset to the point where he was too upset to carry on a casual conversation and would not allow anybody else to speak but himself without interrupting. I'm sorry, Christian, what was it you wanted to say?
I was saying, like I said, I used to believe in evolution like most because it's just that I was just trying to figure out what was that word. I forgot. I haven't heard it for a while.
If I knew what it was related to, I might help you find it.
I forgot.
Is it related to genetics?
Yeah, something in genetics.
It's not mutation. It's not.
I'm just trying to remember. Like I study this stuff. It's just that you know how when you study some things, you forget some things sometimes.
You know, I couldn't begin to. What is it supposed to do?
Was it called not clarification? Oh, something clear. You know that time when they try to say in the legal frequencies when something changes, and then it changes from another thing, and he was saying, well, he was trying to tell me, well, he kept trying to tell me something about, you know, something, you know, if you walk a mile or something. I think he was trying to point out like a mutation.
Macroevolution?
Yeah, something in macroevolution.
Mm.
I think. No. Trying to remember.
Mm. I don't know. Hmm.
There's one more thing though I find kind of fishy with sometimes the evolutionists though. Is you know how they always point out, do you have a scientific journal for that? Do you have a scientific? I understand you want some credentials and you want something that's accredited, but why are you like whenever you point out something in the flaw in the credited information as could be misleading, they start jumping up on you sometimes.
Yeah. Well, the evolutionists believe things that have been proven to be destructive to the genome are somehow not. They have to believe that anyway. This is one of the reasons that evolution theory is anti-science, because we know that this movement of recombination hotspots, we know that chromosomal rearrangements, we know that single-nucleotide polymorphs, all these kinds of genetic changes, mutations, even recombination itself, causes a continuous degradation of the genetic information. But the evolutionist has to believe that it doesn't, even though it's so well documented in the journals that they do. And so what has happened is that evolution theory has come up against modern science, and although there's all this powerful evidence in genetics that these things are destructive to organisms, they have to somehow maintain a belief that they are not in order to believe in evolution. But that goes beyond that. Not only that they're not, but there's somehow mechanisms for evolution. These things that are now proven to be destructive to the genomes of every living thing, they don't not only have to believe that they're not destructive, they have to believe that they're beneficial in some way and will cause organisms to morph over time towards becoming a fundamentally different type of creature with new anatomical features, new structural design. That's what they actually have to believe. See, that's completely anti-science. It goes completely the opposite of all the scientific evidence that's been acquired about what the actual effects of these things are.
How long have you been researching this stuff?
About 8 years, 9.
How many times do you spend time researching this stuff?
Well, I've spent hundreds of hours doing it. I spend anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours a week reading and studying this stuff.
So, are you going to have any doctors you're going to debate?
I've debated 2 PhD evolutionary scientists, one of them in a thread on the internet and one in a live hangout, a Google Hangout. The video of that is on my YouTube channel.
Is there a way to get a hold of him?
Yeah, his name is Dr. Larhammer, Dan Larhammer of University of Upstate.
I would like to get him on a hangout with Ken Hovind, and I was looking for another person. I was an ex-atheist.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you can contact him, I guess. Just find any evolutionist that's has a PhD and challenge.
I'm not saying that there's not no accredited self-educated person. No, it's just that most of the people you come across, they either twist technical terms around or take other stuff out of context to put it for their own position.
Oh, absolutely. Evolutionists are masters of doing that. Just as our friend who was in here a minute ago was doing. And he thinks by reading from a science paper things that, despite the fact that he's not reading any statement that says that the effects of this recombination relocation, hotspot relocation by mutation, is been observed to not be negative or beneficial.
Yeah.
He thinks that by reading the paper, he's providing evidence for his beliefs. See, evolutionists do this a lot. They really love to do that. They think that by just repeating themselves or repeating a lot of words or reading what the paper has to say about something that's not actually directly related to what you're talking about, they're providing evidence that evolution is true, and they're doing no such thing.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say this. They could throw that argument back at us and be like, "Well, you creationists keep repeating stuff too."
Yeah, but see, I was sticking to the subject, though. I was sticking to the subject of what are the observed effects of the movement of a hotspot location by mutation. But he was reading on and on about other things and not what is the observed effects of that. See, I was trying to nail him down to what is the observed effects of the recombination hotspot locations being moved by mutation. He didn't want to stick to that because the evidence is clear about that. It's associated with diseases.
Well, I'm just gonna say this though. I'm not saying like, you know how they always talk about the Neanderthals and that we're slowly evolving more productive.
Yeah.
I've actually started seeing more of a decrease of evolution.
Well, you know, organisms are devolving, if you want to put it that way, and mutation is the mechanism that's doing it. Changing the genome of living things over time constantly by mutation is destructive, and it's weakening and deforming and causing the buildup of diseases and the propensity for disease in every living thing on the planet. It's evidence that the genome was right and made perfect in the beginning, and all continuous processes of genetic change since the creation are just simply moving everything that lives towards extinction. It's inevitable.
Okay.
I believe that if Jesus Christ didn't come back in the next 5,000 years, there won't be another human being on this planet. The mutation is destroying our genome so fast that human beings will simply no longer be fit for survival.
So basically, is it kind of like this? Quote me if I'm wrong, okay? All right. Well, so basically, back in the creation time when people used to live a lot longer and stuff like that, over the years, our genetic codes has been going down. But there's also going to be counter arguments to that. They're going to say, well, the medicine we have nowadays that's keeping us alive longer.
Mm-hmm. Well, medicine might be doing that, but that's not directly related to the meltdown of the genome of various living things due to mutation. You know. That might just be, kind of minimally extending human life for a time, but it's not going to undo, and Kent has no power to undo the continuously destructive effect of mutation that's building up in our genome. In fact, you should research what some scientists have to say about that. I'll give you a couple.
Just put them in the thing, and I'll look it up later.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, I agree with you that evolution is a very stupid theory. I do agree with you.
Oh, absolutely. It's contrary to actual science. It's not science, nor is it scientific. It's a philosophy, but it's not science. Here's a statement by. This is a very telling one here. It is by C.F. Baer, Miyamoto, M.M., Denver, D.R. This is a science paper in Nature Review Genetics. They say, all multicellular organisms are undergoing inexorable genomic decay from mutations because of natural selection cannot remove the damage. They're saying, let me read that again. All multicellular organisms are undergoing inexorable genome decay from mutations because natural selection cannot remove the damage. That's from a paper titled Mutation Rate Variation in Multicellular Eukaryotes, Causes and Consequences, Nature Review Genetics, 2007. In other words, all the living things of this planet are in genomic decay.
Well, I understand. I understand what you were saying, though. I'm not saying I know everything in science, but I understand the technical terms.
Yeah, and here's another by Alexander Williams, a plant biologist. He says, wait a minute.
I got one question. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard of the court case when they ruled out intelligent design out of the school?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay. I got to do some more further investigation in that.
Mm-hmm.
But they were talking about irreducible complexity. There's some hypocrisy in that.
Hypocrisy. The evolutionists are saying there's hypocrisy in.
There's something wrong with irreducible complexity. They're saying that us creationists, we keep claiming that, you know, how evolution defiles beneficial mutation, irreducible complexity, and such on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a smokescreen statement. Irreducible complexity is real. Excuse me. There are many examples of it in the cell, such as the relationship between the polymerase machinery that reads the codes for proteins and the codes for the proteins themselves. It's a product of its own translation. Both had to have existed in the beginning. To get the protein codes, you have to have a machine made of proteins.
Basically,
it reads its own codes, in other words, to produce itself from the DNA. So it's a product of its own translation. It had to have existed at the same time as the DNA did, or neither would exist. It's impossible. So in fact, all of the machinery that produces proteins or is involved in the process of protein production is irreducible complexity. The ribosome itself is also comprised of proteins. The transfer molecules are proteins.
I was gonna say
of proteins. You know.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, because if you research some of the stuff, like, you know, what we believe. I researched some of the stuff like on Wikipedia, like a couple, like a month or two ago. They were saying that a lot of stuff we speak is a lot of pseudoscience.
Well, the truth is, it's the evolutionist that speaks the pseudoscience.
I agree with you. It's just that. Sorry.
Yeah, they say that of creationists because they want people to believe that. But evolution is not science. See, if it were scientific, then scientists who write of these things, these matters in the journals, would simply admit the obvious conclusion in their papers and say, look, evolution is not plausible because of this. But they can't do that because they'll lose their job if they do. The evolution is machinery.
Is it kind of like that movie, Expelled?
Yes, that's exactly right. They'll lose their jobs. And evolution is a religious system.
I do agree with you. It's just,
and that's why you can't go up against it if you want to keep your job. So the scientists can't write the obvious conclusion from what they observe, even if they believe in evolution. They have to write that, well, it happens anyway, or it happens somehow, instead of coming to the obvious conclusion based on the evidence that they discover. If they were honest with the evidence, they'd simply say, well, this means evolution is implausible or impossible. They can't do that.
I was going to say that there's this website that expelled an atheist. Quoted me too, and I was telling like vaccines and stuff. That stuff is bad for you. Like, yeah, I've researched stuff in vaccines. A lot of stuff is really bad for you.
Yeah, some of it is, they say. I don't know how true that stuff is, though.
What, about the vaccines?
Yeah.
Do you believe in vaccines?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I was just saying, this is a past experience because I had a challenge on my page. I'll give $500 to someone that actually proves evolution.
Yeah. Evolution has been so thoroughly disproven. It's just that the people that run the evolutionary promotion machine, behind the scenes and rule the scientific community, they can't let go of it, because if they do, then creation takes over, and that means God exists, and they hate that. So they fight tooth and nail to keep any discussion that questions evolution theory out of academia. They strive to do so.
So is it basically like this? Hey, Nephi, and Christian, there's this thing, there's the imaginary potato, and we keep making up so much scientific theories why the potato by physics, and we use like stuff that looks like it's real, and then we cherry pick, and then we use other things that sound logical, and we mix it together to make it seem like there's the imaginary potato, why it's real, but in actuality, the imaginary potato doesn't even exist.
Yeah, well, they'll say any kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just being stupid, but sure.
Yeah.
All right. How long are you gonna keep the hangout open?
I don't know. If I might just keep it open a while and see if anybody shows up. Yeah, then I'll discuss other things. I wish that that I could have a discussion without being talked over constantly. It could be a two-way thing. But you notice when I asked him, I asked him a number of questions about the things that he was claiming, and he never actually did address any of them. He never directly answered any of my questions. Instead, he did what's called moving the goalpost.
Are you basically mean like red herring?
You're going off on something else instead of addressing what's actually being asked of you.
Yeah, that's what you call red herring. You're not addressing.
Yeah. He instead of actually responding to me, and that's telling.
Okay. All right. I remember I invited you to a hangout one time, like a month or two ago.
Yeah.
I had a question. Do you study Calvinism and Arminianism? Sometimes.
I don't really know anything about Arminianism, but I'm reasonably familiar with Calvinism. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, the reason I call myself the Christian skeptic, not that I'm skeptical in the gospel, no. The reason I call myself that is because I'm kind of skeptical in other doctrinal beliefs, and I try to fit in what makes perfect sense, at least the most closest to the scripture.
Yeah.
And I saw the 5 points of Calvinism and Arminianism, and I saw some of them that kind of contradict each other.
Yeah.
What type of Calvinism don't you agree with, like hyper or all of it?
Yeah, I think Calvinism is a heresy that insults the character of God terribly.
Okay. Well, I could be wrong in my belief. I do believe we kind of predestinated, but I still believe we have free will. The Lord's going to know what we're going to do. No. I'm not going to get angry at it or anything. No, I'm just trying to figure out how long have you studied about Calvinism?
Not long, a month or two, about 2 months.
Oh, okay.
I know enough about it to know it's not true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's universalism, and there's I forgot this one. I heard there's another one called overcomers and stuff like that. Anyways, John Calvin. I did see some of the stuff in it, and I'm not trying to say I agree with it. I know some Calvinists I've talked to, and I don't know, because the Bible does say there's how when we accept the gospel, we accept it out of free will.
Excuse me. Yeah, the free will is a necessary component. else the gospel doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Libertarian free will, man's choosing to accept or reject the message.
You believe in libertarian free will?
Absolutely. The gospel message makes no sense without it.
Okay.
And it makes no sense for God to make an offer of salvation to somebody, to ask them to choose Him, if it weren't that they freely have the complete ability to accept or reject Him.
Okay. Because I've noticed most Baptists, not all of them, but I know most Baptists, they go off like Calvinism and stuff.
I don't think most do. I think some do. Baptism, I think it's more accurate to say that Baptists are probably one of the few denominations that have the least number of Calvinists in them.
Oh.
But not that they're not free of Calvinists. There are certainly Calvinists in the Baptist church, and I think it's probably growing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just saying what I've seen, and like I said, I could be wrong. There's other type of
Well, you might
stuff
want to look into what's preached by the Presbyterians, the Lutherans, the Methodists, and whatnot. They're heavily infected with Calvinism.
Well, I was gonna say what I've seen in Baptist churches, the ones I've been here where I live, the ones I visited, I've seen a lot of them preach. Some of them, most of them have preached once saved, always saved. Stuff like that. And
well, I believe once saved, always saved. I currently believe that is the case. It seems to me the Bible states that we have eternal security. But I don't. I'd be willing to change my opinion about that if somebody could prove to me the Word doesn't actually teach that. But currently, I believe that once saved, always saved is true.
You believe that's You believe that's true?
Do I believe what?
You believe once saved, always saved?
Yeah, I currently do believe that is true because of what the Bible says about eternal security.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason I believe we could lose a little bit of our salvation if we go back to our old ways is, I'm just saying, if I'm wrong, well then you could quote me stuff when I'm wrong. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm open. What you saying?
Well, I look at it like this. If somebody does that and stays permanently away from God and doesn't want anything more to do with Him and no longer humble to Him and doesn't, then they never were Christ. They never were saved. Because I believe God does not give the free gift. See, it's a gift that we receive. And God does not give the sealing. He doesn't seal somebody into His kingdom permanently if He knows that they'll turn away from Him and reject Him fully. God knows our lives from beginning to end. And He knows if by accepting the message, He knows whether we'll stay with Him or not. And I think this is what He bases His giving of the gift to us on. He gives it to us. If we receive it, we keep it, But if we turn away from it, then did we ever really fully receive it? We never did. He might have offered it, but we never received it. To receive it in Scripture means to take it. So I believe if somebody turns away,
No.
It sounds a little convoluted. I guess it can be, but I don't believe that in predestination, the Bible doesn't teach the predestination of the individual. It teaches that God predestined that He would have a people unto Himself and they would be His children.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying, though, is because the reason I believe that you could do that, how it says in Romans that none of these people shall enter the kingdom of God, and if you're going back, or it's like a dog going back to its vomit or something.
Mm-hmm.
What I've read in Scripture. That's what I've seen in there.
I'm willing to admit that I could be wrong about eternal security. Maybe my understanding of that is not right. Once saved, always saved is not true. But there is a passage in the Bible that says that if somebody did not heed God's warning, He would write them out, blot their name out of His book of life, which implies that they're already in the book of life. You see, it implies that it's a removal process, not an adding.
Okay.
that everybody is considered saved unless they reject God. See, that's the default, is that you've been given salvation. God has made it available to you.
Well, I don't think I would. Well, before, when I was a non-believer, when I was believing all the satanic things I used to do. I used to listen to a lot of devil music and stuff, and I don't think I was really saved. I did believe there was a God, but I wasn't really like. I don't think I was really saved. If I would have continued in that sin, I would have died. I would have died and gone to hell. Hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
I'm just saying I would have died and gone to hell. You know.
Well, the Bible doesn't tells us that it's not what we do or don't do that it saves us. It's our faith in Christ.
Well,
So
and I understand.
we can't make ourselves good enough to be worthy of Him.
Hello?
Hey.
Okay, well, I'm just saying I know we're not saved by works, we're saved by faith in Christ. Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like before, if I kept remaining in like my sins, because doesn't Romans say, for the wages of sin is death.
Yeah. Right, but that's what we deserve. That's not what we get if we have faith in Christ. You know.
Oh, and I understand that. It's just that before, when I was little, I accepted Christ, yes, but then I turned away from the gospel by doing a bunch of stuff I shouldn't be doing, and I'm just gonna admit to you, I think I deserve to go to hell for all that stuff if I didn't repent. And I'm just saying, in repentance, we gotta abandon that old sinful stuff. Like, I used to support homosexual marriage.
Yeah.
That's a big sin.
Yeah.
Well, I got a question for you. Why don't you think King James Bible is not?
How is it that I think what?
The King James Bible is not really like. Like, do you believe it's an inspired word of God?
Yeah, I believe that the Bible is not the Word of God. I believe the Scriptures are. Bibles are translations of the Word of God into a language. Those are not inspired, but the Scriptures themselves, the original texts, are.
Oh.
If that were not so, then Paul would not have written that he believed but was unsure. That at one point Paul writes that he believes but he's not sure that he has the Spirit of God in him when he says what he says. If he had doubt, if it was that even every single word of the Bible was dictated to the authors who penned them down, then Paul would have never said that. So
okay, so
I believe some of the words of the Bible were directly given, every word for word, by God, and man wrote down exactly what the words that God wanted him to write down. But I believe much of the Bible is not a clear dictation, but more an understanding of what knowledge that God wants them to convey, and they wrote it in their own words.
Oh, I got a question for you. Okay, so what do you think about like I think most of the missing, they say the missing books of the Bible, I think most of those are Gnostic, but what do you think about those? Do you think those were inspired?
No, they are not.
Like Judas, Paul, Jasper, Enoch, and so on?
No, not inspired. They don't make statements in them that their inspiration is coming from God, or there's no evidence. Like in the book of Jeremiah, you read, the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah. You don't find anything like that in the book of Enoch or anything.
No.
Not to my knowledge. And they have errors in them too. The book of Enoch says that the giants achieved a height of 3,000 ells. That has to be there has to be a mistake because 3,000 L's is about 250 some odd feet. And I don't believe that's the case. So that's a clerical error in the book of Job.
Well,
I mean, not Job, but in the book of Enoch. Moreover, we don't actually know what the original book of Enoch was like or anything like it because we have so few copies of it. It just appears on the scene all of a sudden a couple of hundred years before Christ, and we don't where it come from. One example, and there's more than one of them, and they vary different. They differ from each other. One of them is believed to be a forgery written in somewhere in a Slavic country in late Middle Age or in the Renaissance or late Middle. So.
well,
There are really a lot of wishy-washy things, and I think some of them actually say things that contradict the Bible. For example, the Apocrypha. Actually,
I already know about that. That is a total lie from the pits of hell.
Yeah, the Apocrypha contradict the Scriptures.
Yeah, I already know about that. I don't. I read the King James, but I believe there's scriptures that are even more accurate than the King James.
I don't know of any, but which one would that be?
I don't know. I'm just saying there's other things out there. There's probably stuff. Like I said, I'm open-minded, but before I accept it, I gotta see if it. I gotta research it and see if it's really, really, really close to the the KJV.
Yeah, I would have to have strong evidence that it was more accurate than the King James.
Well, I already know how it was made. King James got all these other people and stuff like that, and I'm not saying I'm a only King James or no. I use it. The reason I use it is because I prefer the King James more than like the NIV and the other ones.
Uh-huh.
So, you call yourself Nephilim free? Do you believe really in the Nephilim?
I believe in them. The Bible speaks of them. It says, and the sons of God came unto the daughters of men and bare giants. And the giants were mentioned numerous times throughout the Old Testament.
Okay. I do believe in giants because I seen naturalistic proof and etc. But I was gonna say I've heard that there's something in Job that talks about them, or Book of Job or Joel. I don't know, one of those two talks about Nephilim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's quite a bit of statements about them in the Bible. In the Old Testament, the Hebrews went up to the Israelites went up against them in war repeatedly.
All right. What about Jude? It talked about Enoch prophesizing. I'm pretty sure that's probably quoting something from Genesis.
Yeah, Enoch was indeed a prophet before the flood. It's true. The Bible says so. But that doesn't mean the book of Enoch was actually written by Enoch.
No, it wasn't, because he got taken up to heaven.
Well, actually, he didn't go to heaven. The Bible says no man has ascended into heaven except Jesus Christ. So what heaven he got taken up to is, there's three heavens mentioned in the Bible. The first heaven is the atmosphere of the earth, the second is outer space, and the third is the immaterial timeless abode of God. He didn't get taken to that one because the Bible says that nobody has gone there but Jesus Christ, who came from there. So he had to have been taken to one of the other two heavens, into either outer space or into the atmosphere of the earth. The words in the Bible, when it says that he was taken, taken into third heaven, actually go to the original Hebrew and you'll find that the word literally means that he was translocated. So what I believe it means is that Enoch was probably, this is my personal interpretation of it, I can't prove that, but this is what I currently believe. You know how Elijah was mocked by a bunch of demonic preteens that followed him around and mocked him, right? Doing the work of Satan, right? And so God moved Elijah. He took him away. We don't know where he put him, but he took him. Probably to spare Elijah from being captured, maybe tortured or killed by the God haters that were he was around him at the time. Not just these, but I mean in the area. And I think that's probably the same thing happened with Enoch. Enoch was surrounded by naysayers, God haters, demonic spirit people possessed with demonic.
Oh, okay.
And so to spare Enoch his life and from being captured, maybe tortured or killed in the name of God, God moved him. He translocated him from one place to another to get him into safety. That's what I apparently believe, but I promise you, I can't prove that with the Bible. But there is a good implication that that might be the case with the scripture.
Oh, okay. Well, do you use stuff like eSword to study the Greek etymology and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use eSword.
Okay. Well, if I'm gonna say, if you say anything wrong in my preaching, because I do preach on YouTube with another brother, if you say anything wrong, I just say if you say anything wrong, we'll take in consideration.
Okay, well, I haven't actually seen anything you preached, so I couldn't comment.
Well, I'm just gonna tell you this: I'm not Pentecostal or any of that.
Yeah.
I'm not any of that. I'm just trying to figure out what's the thing that's most close to Scripture.
Okay. Yeah, I try to be true to the word when I talk about it.
I had a question too. Do you believe like the Illuminati and Freemasons?
Yeah, they're obviously real.
Oh. Oh, okay. I do believe in stuff, and they try to call people like us that we're dummies because we don't know what we're talking about. I'm like, I don't believe every conspiracy I hear. You know that for a fact.
I don't either, but they do a lot of damage control. I noticed on TV today there was a program about the Freemasons, about the obelisk in Washington, D.C., and other things relating to the Freemasons, where they were really, the program was trying to make you think that the Masons were not behind a lot of these things. And it just became glaringly apparent to me that the purpose of that whole show was damage control by the Freemasons in order to try to make people no longer believe that the Freemasons are up to no good or they have secret agendas. And so that was the reason that program was even on TV, you know. So. But I don't carry on and on about them. Anybody asks me, I'll tell them it's an evil organization, and 90-something% of the people in it think they're a part of a do-gooder society, and they don't really know the true agenda of the organization. They're there to do, to be slaves of it and to give them money, monthly dues. But that's pretty much it. I don't carry on and on about secret societies. My interest is evolution theory and the lies of atheism. Mostly. Well, it's getting a little late. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon where I'm at. I think I'm going to kill the hangout. Don't have anybody else coming in to discuss these matters of genetics with me. I did have one fella come in, and he kept saying that the evidence I provided was not a refutation to evolution theory, but was unable to provide a rebuttal to it, and continuously moved the goalpost on me instead. Actually trying to address the issue. He kept wanting to talk about something else instead of recombination hotspots, and their effects upon them by genetic mutation. So he wanted to constantly talk about something else. He expressed tremendous faith that somehow, even though the journals are full of discussions about the destructive effects of the moving of these hotspot locations by mutation, he was not able to provide a citation or anything that made any kind of case that this is not a pervasive problem for evolution theory. And when asked to directly address the subject, he refused repeatedly. He became angry enough by my insistence that he stick to this topic and support with his claims, that he got into a place where he would no longer have a discussion with me and just wanted to endlessly talk over me. At that point, I realized there's not, it's over with. There will be no more discussion with this fellow. But I hope somebody listening got an idea in their mind, something interesting to think about. look up the effects of hotspot locations, the effects of mutation upon hotspots, genetic hotspot locations, and see for yourself what the science has recorded as the effect. And it's destructive. It causes diseases, deformity, failure to develop these kinds of things. And you just can't have evolution proceeding to move all the hotspot locations of an organism by such destructive, terribly destructive mechanism that causes such degradatory effects hundreds of times and still get a species that is viable and fit for survival that natural selection will select instead of removing from the earth. It's not plausible. So this is powerful evidence against evolution theory. So give that some thought, look into it, and God bless you. Thanks for listening.